My name is Grech, and I'm a former student of cognitive science at the Nicolaus Copernicus University in Poland. I would like to present the results of an experiment conducted under the supervision of Professor Jacek Matulewski from the Physics and Informatics department of my university. The aim of the experiment was to evaluate several gaze control methods designed for board games without time pressure, specifically in checkers. Eye tracking can be used to control the computer software by people who are unable to use traditional control methods, such as the mouse and keyboard for common applications or gamepads for games. The new trend is to install eye trackers in VR and AR goggles, which allow to optimize and improve the image rendering or to enhance safety by monitoring driver attention. Of course, these are just some of the numerous examples of equipment use. We decided to focus on entertainment for people with disabilities, providing a set of gaze-controlled board games, including checkers. Games are not only entertainment. It is worth remembering their positive impact on the development of cognitive functions such as planning, attention, problem-solving, etc. The experiment aims to evaluate 6 methods of gaze controls of pieces in a board game without time pressure, checkers to be exact. We used checkers to keep things simple and relatable. For this reason, we also gave up flying kings. However, it's important to note that the solution we're suggesting applies to a wide array of board games, extending beyond just those traditionally played on a standard chessboard. Due to the promising outcomes yielded by the dwell time method, we chose to incorporate 5 of its variations into our research. Specifically, we were interested in comparing 2 control approaches. One involving direct visual integration within the gaze-aware board, and the other involving gaze-driven exploration while manipulating game pieces using separate buttons located around the board. We call the first method standard and the second one tracking. The second choice allows one to examine the board freely without worrying about accidentally activating elements, but it makes the way you control the game a bit more complicated. Moreover, additional control gaze buttons take up some space, leading to a smaller board. Thus, we decided to check if the size of the board itself affects the use of the controls. To do this, we compared 2 standard methods differing only in board size and additionally the method in which part of the board with the selected field dynamically increases. Only one method differs from the other, which is gesture-based control. It is due to the difficulty of achieving sufficient utility in this case. Other variants of gesture-based methods were rejected in pre-selection. The figures below show board screenshots for 3 of the 5 control methods based on the dwell time. 2 of them, Standard L and Standard S, differ only in the board size, while the Standard M method has the same size of the board as Standard S, but in addition, when selecting the current field or direction of the pawn movement, the surrounding fields gradually enlarge. The following 2 control methods also use dwell time as a gaze buttons activation method. However, they differ from the previous ones in the location of the active elements. In the case of tracking A and tracking B methods, the elements for choosing a pawn and its movement direction are located around the board, reducing the risk of unintentional activation. The element that distinguishes the tracking A method from tracking B is an additional confirmation button which the player must look at to approve the choice of the pawn or the direction of its movement. It should be mentioned that the duration of the dwell time could be adjusted by the study participants with a step of 100 milliseconds. We recorded both changes and its final value. The last control method is the most different, requiring the player to use gestures made with the eyes. The users must move their gaze between the dots around the board to change the active field and make a move. The horizontal and vertical gestures allow one to change the active field, while the diagonal moves cause the pawns to move. We have distinguished 7 hypotheses that will be tested to obtain the best control method according to users, and the most useful based on eye tracking data and questionnaires. A detailed discussion of the hypothesis will be presented later in the presentation. While establishing the hypothesis, we based our previous experience which shows that despite our many attempts, direct control using dwell time was usually the easiest and best rated by user. The experiment was conducted in a dedicated room with artificial lighting. We chose the Toby4CI tracker, one of the cheapest and most popular on the market, to test the solution using the widely accessible hardware. The study involved 30 participants with an average age of about 22 years. All participants were students, and all reported they knew the checkers. Interestingly, the questionnaire filled in at the start showed that the majority of the participants rated their checkers skills as moderate or poor. The experiment consisted of 5 stages. Respondents entered the room in pairs. Individuals were given a pre-test questionnaire to collect basic information about the subject and to obtain the necessary consent for analysis and acquisition of accumulator data. Then a calibration was carried out with the first person tested. A random order was assigned for each person to test the 6 control methods. A single game lasted approximately 7 minutes and the user could play freely without imposed rules. After each game, the participant went to a separate room where they were asked to fill 2 online questionnaires: System Usability Scale and User Experience Questionnaire. 2 additional open-ended questions on physical and mental fatigue were placed into one of them. After all gaze control method had been tested, the participant was given a final questionnaire which consisted of a ranking. Analysis of the results showed that users frequently used the time adjustment function. In only one case, user tried a time longer than 1000 milliseconds. In all the others, users gradually reduced the times. The median of final dwell time for all the above methods was 700 milliseconds with a distribution close to Gaussian. Collecting participants' opinions of the gaze control methods allows us to evaluate these methods. When analyzing the participants' feedback, we noticed some recurring phrases. The standard method was described as simple, easy, and intuitive. Its L and S variants were additionally described as fast. All of these methods, however, encountered difficulties in activating the corresponding boxes on the board using games. In the control modes with smaller boards, all dwell time-based method except standard L, participants found it challenging to select the correct boxes. It is worth noting that the comments of the methods where the user interface elements related to gaze control were placed around the board rather than on it. Tracking A, tracking B, and gestures. Some participants complained that dislocation of the buttons of the board distracted them from the game itself, negatively affecting concentration. However, others appreciate the freedom to look at the board without worrying about accidental activations. Many felt that the standard mode, both L and S, was most similar to traditional checkers, both physical and computer-based. It is worth noting that, despite the lower rating, the visual gesture version was considered promising, especially if players had more time to get used to it. Now let's look at the results of the system usability scale. Only the gestures method received a negative grade, F, while the other methods were rated higher. The standard L method received the highest grade, A, confirming hypothesis H1 that this variant of the standard control method would achieve the best grade. The user experience questionnaire and post-test ranking also confirmed these results. The gestures method was met with a lack of enthusiasm from the participants, which can be explained by the need to learn a new way of controlling and remembering the eye movements corresponding to the gestures. Analysis of the standard L and standard S variants allowed us to understand how users perceived the reduced size of the board. Users appreciated the larger board more for standard L, which confirmed the hypothesis too, that a larger board increases the attractiveness, clarity, and effectiveness of the interface. It was also important to explore the option of enlarging parts of the board. The standard S and M methods were not significantly different in terms of usability, which refuted hypothesis 3. However, participant evaluations indicated a higher rating for the M version than the S version, suggesting that the zoom option may improve the usability of the standard method. The final ranking of gaze control modes was based on ease of learning, usability, intuitiveness, and overall user satisfaction. The standard L method came first and the gestures method was at the end. This confirmed hypotheses 4 and 5 that the standard method, especially the L one, is easier to learn, more comfortable, and more satisfying for the user. Our analyzed material also allowed us to infer participant fatigue. The gesture method proved to be the most tiring, both in terms of mental and physical fatigue. The standard S method was slightly less tiring. These results supported hypothesis 6, that the gestures method is more taxing for users than the other methods. Overall, we confirmed 6 of the 7 hypotheses. Unfortunately, we failed to overcome the dominance of natural usability of the dwell time method. What is intuitive and easy to learn once again turned out to be the most attractive and useful, also due to the similarity to playing on a physical board. Thus, the standard L method seems to have delivered the best results, confirming that simplicity is usually the best solution. However, keep in mind that we studied novices. Perhaps after prolonged use, the preferences of players would be different.